Today I really want to talk about our digital landscape and what this actually means for teen learning, from literacies and some of the new possibilities that we can actually provide. I am a professor of educational technology, but my official University of Regina page, I don't think I've updated it since about 2006. Just because when it comes down to it, professionals today typically will use a number of other spaces, and I actually have these printed off. I don't have any today, but which is a bit of an irony, but really when it comes down to it, if you want to get to know me, you Google me. The things that we create, our digital identities, become this big blur between professional and personal identities. Actually, this is an about.me page, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but basically go to about.me, and you can set up your profile, your jumping point off the web. And in this, I basically declare, so usually you add a photograph, and you declare yourself, and I happen to be on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Flickr and YouTube and WordPress and Google Plus and Instagram and Foursquare and probably a host of others. I get my undergrads to also do this, to let them know that when they're online that they have to understand what's out there about them and that they need to declare that they're out there. I run these things called MOOCs, which again are massive open online courses. The course that I ran recently had about 2,000 participants from 70 countries. And this is not something I do through the university. This is just something that I do from my own personal account, from my own personal identity. And what's really interesting is that now a person outside of an institution could potentially connect to 2,000 or tens of thousands of people in a learning environment, whether it's a formal arrangement or an informal arrangement. So the point I'm trying to make early in this presentation really is that our kids are living in these public spheres. They whether it's going to be Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or whatever comes after it. 5 years ago, it would have been Friendster and MySpace, for instance. But these particular social networks and the potentials and the downfalls, the pitfalls of these tools are going to be forever ingrained in our youth culture for the years to come. The decisions that they make right now will come to affect what they want to be, what they want to become, their potential, for instance. And so in terms of media, we've seen these significant shifts. We've gone from atoms to bits, and you can say, rather than picking up videos in these, in trucks taking videos to video stores and you going to a video store, we've moved from atoms to bits, from scarcity to abundance, from consuming to creating, or at least in some spaces we're seeing more creativity and more kids able to create things, from standardization to personalization. Just like when we want to watch a particular series, we watch it when we want at our convenience rather than waiting for someone to dictate when we watch something. From individuals to networks, and you can see the individuals to networks in something like this, the number of recording devices that are available. This is back in 2008 still. And then, even looking from Pope Benedict to Pope Francis here, the number of devices and how people record that event. You can imagine them tweeting and sending out, Instagramming or whatever else. I mean, I could imagine the tweets coming from those devices. And those aren't candles, by the way. Those are all, all recording devices. And that's just a span of 8 years and how differently we interact with media and events. It's something that we can all do. We can play with media. We no longer have to accept it the way that it comes to us, that it's packaged for us. If we want to sprinkle a little goat, we want to do a Harlem shuffle and be part of something that other people are doing, we can do that sort of thing. As a website like youtube.com/education. The content that's being created there outside of educational institutions could rival any well-endowed university or other educational institution. Like, they've got fantastic content. If I want to learn about history or whatever else, or science or mathematics, I will look to youtube.com/education. Like, there's fantastic resources there. And there's all sorts of free and open content. There are entire courses that you can take online. There is, the copyleft movement, the Creative Commons, and all sorts of other things, of course, that are available. So, for instance, with Coursera, the two Canadian partners are UBC and the U of T, and they will provide courses through this. Now, they're not for credit. They're massive. They're not for assessment, but they're free. And some of them are fantastic professors that are teaching these courses. And it's really shifted what people are thinking about in higher ed. Like, this could be, in many ways, a future of higher education. And for a high school student, there's a fantastic algebra course that you could sign up for free, get support, connect with others around the world, and this is available to you. but often people are, not independent enough, not autonomous enough to want to even pursue something like this. Now, if I think of my own daughter and how she supplements her own learning, so she goes to formal piano instruction, she performs as a good young scholar would. But if you really want to learn something that you heard on the radio, what my daughter will do is from the age of 6 already, one time I told her my wedding song was Ben Folds 5, The Luckiest, and I told her, and she said, "Dad, could you teach me that tonight?" And at 6-year-old, it was too much to take on an evening, and I had a couple of other things to do. I said, I will teach you tomorrow. And she didn't need to wait for me. She just went to YouTube and typed in Ben Folds 5 tutorial piano, and she doesn't even have to spell it properly, right? At 6 years old, Google will do the spelling for you, pretty much, even whatever age you are. And she was able to find it, so an hour later, I go into her room, she's got her laptop on her piano, and she's learning it. Some person decided to share his learning with the world so that someone else could learn. He didn't know that my daughter would pick it up. It doesn't really matter, but someone sharing their learning with someone changes everything for the classroom. You can learn basically anything, certainly artistic, on YouTube if you look for it hard enough. So we're seeing a shift to more of these informal forms of learning. We're seeing people share their learning differently. How can we continue to learn beyond school? School is, I'm not saying no longer sufficient, it's only one part of our learning experience. It's one node, one thing that we do in a larger scheme of learning in our society. McLuhan said, back in the 60s, we shape our tools and then our tools shape us. The presence of these devices in our pockets, the presence of them here, definitely determine how we act and relate and talk to one another or don't talk to one another. So it's important to look at, how this is actually changing and shaping our youth as well. So if you think about relationships, and actually it's kind of funny, I tweeted yesterday, I was on the plane yesterday, and this guy was trying to get the most amazing selfie. Like he was basically on the plane, like he just couldn't get it right. He was just doing this thing where he just wanted to get the selfie up before he, probably saying something like, taking off to Toronto or something from Regina, and he was just positioning the camera to get the light just perfect on this plane. And just when he got to, I had to photobomb him. Like I photobombed him. and it was like this extreme narcissism to extreme disappointment in about a second. It was just amazing. And I felt really bad. It was a very uncomfortable flight, actually. And I think we often capture ourselves, performing for others. Like much of what we do, relationships or other things, are performing for others. And we have to really understand what that means for our kids. What does that performance mean? What does that mean when a big part of our self is now a public self? But it's interesting to see that the parts that used to be private just don't seem as private anymore. There's a guy by the name of Howard Rheingold. He actually uses the term attention literacy, and with his students, he'll be in a room like this, and when they're doing independent work, he'll actually ring a bell once in a while, and they journal what they were paying attention to at that moment, the bell that you're ringing. And to be kind of more understanding, for instance, of the things that we're actually paying attention to. Are we always shifting? Are we on Reddit in a few seconds? Or are we watching videos? Did we intend to do this, but we ended up over here? And how do we actually control that? Now, if you think about John Pikes or Obama or any of the people that we looked at, digital identity is becoming more and more important in all of this. Because at one point, we had control. Like I go to my mother's house, and basically she's got shoe boxes full of photographs, and they weren't shared, but they'd have like a description on the back what they were, where they were taken. They were meta tagged, I guess, in that sense. But our identities were very closed and controlled. I would appear in the newspaper the odd time as a child, but I wouldn't appear anywhere else. I mean, it was pretty controlled. I knew, if I was in the newspaper, I did something really good or something really bad. But when you think about this, we have to make these decisions for kids. So for kids that I deal with, and I work with a lot of younger kids, I just basically give them, the basics around this, is that any photograph that you share online can be easily copied, instantly shared, easily edited, and if you're lucky or unlucky, you can have it viewable by millions of people. And where things used to be private by default and public with effort, we've shifted this to public by default and private with effort. Now, if you look in the context of Saskatchewan here, this is just an example. We had this contest. Our government put on this contest. It was called the Saskatchewan Wanderer Contest. And so this was a contest. So if you develop this really good social media profile, if you got the most tweets and likes and all of that other social media metrics, you could win this job. And the job was basically all summer you got to drive around Saskatchewan and tweet and YouTube and basically tell people why it's a good place to come visit. And so there was a guy by the name of Nathan Tone, and he was doing really well in this contest. And so he was 19 years old, trying to get the summer job. And at 17 years old, he was at a Riders game, and he was in the university section. If you've ever been in that place, it's kind of a place where there's like no law. It's the Wild West, basically, in the Riders section. People swear and drink, and it's a university section, right? But what happened was someone YouTubed him swearing. He was singing a song against the Edmonton Eskimos, and it wasn't a very good song. This popped up when he was 17, like a video of him when he was 17, and he lost the job opportunity at 19. And I think that's important, is that this context collapse happens, that something that was, didn't seem like a big deal ends up costing you an opportunity. And to also understand and let our kids know that the world is watching. I love Seth Godin's quote, basically, everything you do now ends up in your permanent record. The best plan is to overload Google with a long tail of good stuff and to always act as if you're on candid camera, because you are. Now, in terms of a positive identity, some of the things that we're doing and things that you could do, and I'll just give you, first of all, the background behind this is that it's not just the bad things, but also they're looking at kids being digitally non-existent. We have the most amazing technologies today. We have the ability for anyone to basically publish and create and do things online. Why aren't you doing something about it? Why don't you have a digital identity? Why haven't you created anything online? And so this idea of being digitally non-existent is almost as much a deficit or a negative towards kids than actually having that bad thing out there. Back to Seth Godin's idea, like creating this long tail of good stuff for our kids. One of the things that we should do is, by claiming your web presence, you're protected from other people with the same name claiming it before you. You also gain control over how you're perceived online, and thus what employers find out and how they conduct their search. So we're actually seeing, whether it's parents doing it or we're seeing in schools, where kids are getting their own domain names. We're seeing some at birth, we're seeing some provided by schools. There's actually school board initiatives that basically say, okay, grade 9, we're going to give you your domain name. You've got 4 years to go through this and create something new. So when basically I Google you, this is what's going to come up. You can control your destiny to that extent. And we can't underestimate a kid. This is a 9-year-old blogger from Scotland who did some really interesting things. She created a food blog.
Not your average food blog. Hey, I'm Jillian Pensavalle, and this is Buzz 60. A 9-year-old girl from Scotland has started her own food blog called Never Seconds. She showcases just how disappointing her school lunches are, and she's gone viral. Check this out. Every day, Martha Payne takes a photo of her lunch, and then she adds her own little commentary.
So Martha's blog was really quite something, and she raised the number now, that's in pounds, but up to this point, over 200,000 American. And she donated to all Rwanda school charity, which was amazing. This is a 9-year-old who's changing the world in that sense. And we have the ability to do this. A 9-year-old can have a greater voice than her entire school district. We have to be able to give our kids opportunity to this. So when we look at literacy, put yourself against this sort of thing. 21st century readers and writers must, first of all, develop proficiency with the tools of technology, build relationships with others to pose and solve problems, design and share information for global communities, which is becoming more, moving that voice beyond, manage, analyze, and synthesize multiple streams of simultaneous information, create, critique, and analyze multimedia texts. It's no longer just essays anymore, but also to attend to these ethical responsibilities. So this is from the NCT, the National Council for Teachers of English. What's really important is not just access, but the idea of opportunity. We have to be able to give our kids opportunity. So this is a project I do with my students, and we just simply call it the Learning Project, something that you could certainly adapt if you'd like. So the idea behind the Learning Project is for students to learn something that they would not normally have learned. Anything that they want, the thing that they wanted to desire to learn, and try to use the internet. Not only use the internet to learn it, but also to document their learning online. One of my co-professors, he decided, I don't know how to play guitar, so he decided I'm going to be a lead learner, and I'm going to do this with the kids, with our undergrads. And so he decided to start posting his videos of him learning how to play guitar online. And And what was interesting about this was that he got the attention of a music teacher in Connecticut. So this is a guy from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, who gets the attention of someone from Connecticut, who basically has students of his own, and says, you know what, Dean, I'm going to get my music students to teach you how to do that. So he set up his students to basically look at Dean's really crappy videos of him playing guitar. And so Austin over here he actually created a YouTube video that says, Dean, I'm going to, you don't know how to keep a beat, so I'm going to help you keep a beat. And Bert over there might say, you know what, you don't know how to do a C chord, so I'm going to help you with the C chord. And so they're watching the videos. These kids are becoming teachers, and they're creating this positive digital identity, which is fantastic. We have to help kids understand what's meant for private, what's meant for public, help them negotiate it themselves. And as a final little piece here,
I'll do it.
I want to give you encouragement. This is a 4th grader on a hill who's embracing her fear.
Here,
The longer you wait, you'll be more scared.
I go.
So the last thought I want to leave with you with is, your particular demographic is not necessarily one that has a lot of fear, but one of the best ways to serve the kids that you serve is to jump into some of these places, to experiment yourself, to become more network knowledge, to get a better sense of social media and what is actually possible, to experiment with the tools, to experiment with these ideas, to get a better sense of what's going on. So I think it starts with you in many cases. So I'm just encourage you, if you do have any fear around this, to not be fearful and to give it a plunge, get on that hill, be that 4th grade girl, sort of emanate some of her courage and see that it can be incredibly successful in a short time. And thank you very much for listening today.